Hello and welcome to today's daily news analysis. So we have the following topics over here, and now moving on to the first topic. So first of all, we have Eknath Shinde becoming the Chief Minister of Maharashtra and Fadnavis to be his Deputy Chief Minister. Right, so Fadnavis represents the BJP. Okay, so that's all that was important. Next is 8 killed in Manipur landslip. Now this is an important topic from the point of view of disaster management, that is General Studies paper 3. In fact, previously already a question has been asked on the disaster landslides basically. Right, so I'm taking this topic in detail and this one. So let's move to the landslide thing. So this took place in Manipur. We know that whenever the monsoons are there on the Western Ghats again we have the landslides. So this is an important topic, a perennial topic, and we should not really see it from the point of view of static. Now typically a question could be asked in a way as the way it has been asked over here. So one is the causes and effects of landslides, right? So we would also have to define what are landslides, and then what is the way forward? What are the suggested recommendations, or what suggestions do you give, whatever. So way forward. In this it is asking us about, very specifically about the important components of the national risk management strategy. So this is also a way forward and you can read it over here. These are the points for national landslide risk management strategy. Okay, now before going forward, you may be thinking landslip is mentioned here, landslip, but it is here talking about landslides. So landslides are essentially landslips over here. Now what are the causes and the effects? So typically this is the fall of the landmass downwards. So it is happening because of gravity. It could be because of geological instability, maybe fractures that have taken place over the stone, over the rocks over the long period of time. It could be because of lot of rainfall that is taking place that has led to this thing, deforestation related activities, earthquakes. So any of this could actually result in landslides. So here we have certain points that you can see. Now you can frame your answer this way, that first you can start by talking about some recent incidents, or you can discuss about the vulnerabilities from landslide. In fact, this is again a typical language of UPSC, where it can ask you directly about vulnerability of landslide, assess the vulnerability. So here you would have to give facts. You can also be asked to give more examples. Okay, then you will say that it is predominantly happening because of natural factors, right? So you can give out the natural factors and then say that the anthropogenic reasons also for this thing. So you can divide the points into two parts. So then you can give the anthropogenic factors, that these have been intensified because of the human factors, human induced, and you can list some factors over here, human induced factors. Okay, so this is done. Moving on to the next one, that is government keeps small savings interest rates unchanged. Move belies hopes of hike amid surge in yields from bonds. So we get two concepts over here. This is mainly prelims, but these days we have mains based questions that may actually ask you what are small savings financial instruments. So a small savings instrument. So like that a question is also asked, why are they important? Briefly it can ask you on those lines also. So we have some type of questions that are coming in the recent times. Okay, so government keeps small saving interest rates. So what are these small savings instruments? So these are managed by central government to encourage citizens to save regularly irrespective of their age, and they come with a lot of benefits so that people save in this thing. Okay, so this is we get this. Then which all things are part of the small savings instruments, because they may not be named such, right? Small savings interest rate, it could be like your savings in the postal savings. It is also known as the PPF, monthly income account, Sukanya Samriddhi. In fact, I feel that National Savings Certificate and Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, you should know the features from the point of view of pre. Okay, now this is done. Moving to the next part. Move belies the interest rates have not been changed, but move belies hopes of high coming amid surge in yields from bonds. What does this mean? Yields basically mean return, the earnings. So earnings from bond. Now let's look at it this way. Let's say the government is issuing bond. So government has issued bond. Why is it issuing bond? Because it wants to raise capital from public or private sector. So people will buy bonds, right? So when people buy bonds, they are shelling out money. So government gets money, people get bonds. So the yields from bond is actually for the, or the returns is actually for the people who have invested in the bond. So the yields for bond is increasing, right? So to make, so if the yields are increasing over here, so it's natural to expect that even the interest from the small savings that are there, this should also be increased appropriately in accordance with that thing. So that is what they were expecting, but that has not taken place. Now, if the yields from bonds increases, it is not a good thing for the government, because the government is shelling out more money for raising the capital. So it's not a good thing. Next, Plastic Vikalp Mela. So this is actually a Delhi government ad for we have the trade fairs and all those things. So where they are organizing a Plastic Vikalp Mela along with the B2B interactions. So I imagine that there would be, the government is organizing, and there would be people who are having the stalls who are having alternatives to plastics. So this is being done. Okay. So we have this thing. Then we have this in the Life Mint paper, which says India bans single-use plastic items from 1st of July. So banning of single-use plastic, and in fact, in the previous year, I have the previous year's PIB over here. So it says that the government is having a policy that they want to phase out the single-use plastic by 2022. Okay. So this issue of plastic is very, very important. We can look at it from the point of view of GS3, that is environment, pollution, urban issues. So we can look at it from this over here. Okay. So when we look at plastics again, so one is naturally the single-use plastics. I think the one that we are most familiar with, single-use plastic, polythenes, etc. And we all know if they go into the drains or they are not degradable, so they have harmful effect on the environment. So on similar lines, we can have a question on what are the harmful effects of single-use plastics, what are single-use plastics, what are the harmful effects, what is the way forward, or what measures can be taken, corrective measures that can be taken, what measures are already taken by the government. So we should have a note prepared on this in a structured manner. Right, so plastic vikalp, again, alternatives to plastic. In fact, we should have a thing of what all alternatives are actually available. So you can see this is the imagery over here which tells us about the things that are alternatives to plastic that can be done. Okay. Now just building on this, there was another news which says that these alternatives are actually very, very expensive as compared to these items. Okay, so this is there. Now, one more thing from the PIB we get, that there is a Plastic Waste Management Amendment Rules 2021. You can quote this also in your answer, and if you want to read this, you can get this link from the comment section. I'll post it in the comment box over here. I really don't want you to read the PIB as such. Basic rules you can read, of course, and if you have to read, you can focus more on the facts, alternatives, government may be citing why they are taking these measures, so you'll automatically get the facts over here. Okay, now beyond single-use plastic, we also have the issue of microplastics. So this theme is not being covered, but microplastics is plastics of very, very small in nature, and recently, sometime back, it was seen in a medical research that there are microplastics that are flowing within our blood also. So this is again a very, very important topic, again from the point of view of GS3, pollution, and even science and tech, so GS3. Traffic grinds to a halt as monsoon hits Delhi. Fine, so perennial problem. Okay, not interested, not interested, not interested. What we are interested is that fine, traffic grinds to a halt, too bad, but we get the issue of urban floods over here. Urban floods. And urban floods is a recurring event that is taking place. It has become more and more intensified in the recent times. Furthermore, with greater urbanization taking place, approximately 35%, 30 to 35% of India is urbanized. Actually, the census has not come, so it's not updated. And it's believed that in the next 20 years, about 50+% of India would be urbanized. So, urban floods, more India urbanizing, unplanned urbanization, things are going to get, unfortunately, they're going to get bad. Okay. So this is a very, very important topic. In the year 2016, the National Disaster Management Authority felt that, earlier there was only a category of floods as a disaster, natural disaster. Later on, they added the category of urban floods. This makes sense because 2015 we had the Chennai floods, then 2016 again, lot of areas had floods, lot of urban cities, and this has been continuing actually. And this is a problem not just in India but across the world. Now in the year 2016 when this change was made, UPSC also asked a question on urban flooding. Right, so this is a very, very important theme, and seeing the nature of questions that UPSC has a tendency of repeating the same topics, so we can expect the question over here, and I think seeing the previous year alone would help you a lot. And plus you also have my video on urban flooding, so in a very short, I think 15-20 minute video, I have covered the entire topic. Next, art and culture page actually, and we have to make sense over here. So Amir Khusro's ghazals get an audio visual retreat. Fine, we don't care what singers are doing, Salman Khan is doing all those, but yes, Amir Khusro is important, and we should have a 150 word note on the contributions of Amir Khusro in the field of art and culture, right? So in ghazals, in the evolution of the Hindi language, the modern day Hindi. So in that sense, he's also known as the father of Qawwalis, right? So a lot of contributions are there, and I think it's not very difficult to get a 150 word note of Amir Khusro. Actually, it's not very difficult. You can easily figure it out from the net. Okay, this is again important. So this is talking about some fair or some display actually of the tribal arts. Now tribal arts, if you look, no art has been mentioned as such, but tribal art, if you see, it's part of your art and culture syllabus from the point of view of GS1, right? Art and culture syllabus, GS1, tribal art, specific question can be asked. It has not been asked as yet, so that is there. And tribal issue has been in the UPSC thing, they have been asking from the point, especially from the point of view of society. Now tribal art can also be there. So we should know about different forms of tribal arts, right? What are the measures that the government is taking to promote or sustain the tribal art forms? So that is again a theme that we can work on. So 150 page plus 150 word plus we should have a number of examples and some basic elaboration of different forms of tribal arts and their significance. Nature and significance. Nature means the attributes, qualities of the art, and significance means the impact, the impact on heritage, the impact on social messaging, etc. Okay, now we are on to the national news. I think self-explanatory over here, right? So Congress to contest. Just read the headlines over here. Ecologically sensitive zones. I'll cover this later. I'll do this later. In fact, I'll do tribal art also. Actually, I wanted to read the Introduction to Indian Art. I want to refer to that book first. And there is one more book on art. I want to see that before going deeper into this. Or we can actually have a video on this later. Yeah. This, I think, 4 Sri Lankan refugees arrived at Dhanushkodi because of the Sri Lankan economic crisis, Tamilian population moving on to Tamil Nadu state. Caste census drive in Bihar, forum to start, so that is there. Okay. Andhra Pradesh tops country in ease of doing business rankings. So there is this ease of doing business ranking by the World Bank, which ranks different countries with reference to how easy it is to start their business, and it takes into account only the cities of Delhi and Bombay. Later, Niti Ayog thought that why don't we rank independent states, individual states, as to how they are doing with reference to ease of doing business. So each state started to be ranked by Niti Ayog. So in this, Andhra Pradesh has topped, and we have such lot of indexes, international indexes have been adapted to the Indian context. Alert in Thrissur after wild boar gets anthrax. Okay. So from prelims perspective, naturally we should have some basic details about anthrax. So we should know, like prelims, they may ask you, is it a bacterial disease, viral disease, so something to that effect. Which animal does it affect? I think it's pigs actually, boars actually. So it affects them primarily. Okay, then we should have basic idea of the symptoms. Antibiotic treatment cures most infections. Inhaled anthrax is hard to treat and can be fatal. Okay, so that is there from prelims. Now from mains perspective, I think there was this thing known as the One Health approach when the COVID thing was going on. It's still going on. So One Health approach, not app. Okay, so what does this mean? One Health approach means that the health of human being should be seen holistically. Human being can be infected from other species, like in the case of COVID, it's believed that it has come from the bats. So we have to look at the health of the entire ecosystem, which includes both flora and fauna. So anthrax is again a disease that is coming from the animal to the human beings. Likewise, we have the bird flu, swine flu, and more of diseases are coming from the wild into the human beings. And the risk is actually increasing given the encroachment of the human beings into the forest. More encroachment is taking place, or the melting of the Arctics. So more diseases may come forward in the recent times. So that is one way of looking at it. So we should have a note on the One Health approach. Second point of view of One Health approach is that One Health globally. So it should not be just like, America says that our health is fine, we have vaccinated every single person for COVID, will not get affected. While there is a difficult problem taking place in, let's say, Africa or India and other places, and vaccines, medicines, etc. are not available. So the disease from their mutated form can actually come back to the developed countries like America. So we should actually focus on curing every single person in the globe and not just have a country-based approach or region-based approach. Okay, moving to the next one. This is about G7. This is actually an editorial kind of a sum up of what all things have taken place. So one thing is the statement over here: geopolitics trumps economics, and it says that it is the annual summit of the world's most industrialized country. Fine, I think we said this earlier also. So naturally, these most industrialized countries, the most developed countries, naturally their focus is economic interest, and that is why the summit was formed. And if you have missed it, it was earlier known as the G8, then Russia was removed, so it becomes G7. So economic interest, like what will we do with the WTO, how will we counter the developing countries, their demands, climate change issue. So G7 focuses on those areas normally. But this time the focus has been more towards the geopolitics. So economics has trumped geopolitics. What all things? So their focus has been on the twin challenges that are coming from Russia and China. Right, so Ukrainian crisis that is there, and its impact on energy markets, like crude becoming more expensive, sanctions, cyber security threat, so those issues. And Chinese side, like what will happen to Taiwan? What about the South China Sea? So expansive maritime claims, rights violations, Uyghur population in the Western China or Central Asia region. So that part. Unsustainable debt creation because of China's Belt and Road Initiative. And how do we counter that? So with reference to Belt and Road Initiative, they did mention about a new initiative, so a US-led partnership for global infrastructure and investment. So this was announced, right? So one is this, they were focusing on these issues overall. Furthermore, they talked about the issue of resilient democracies, democratic values, and why these should be there. And naturally, when they are talking about Russia and China, they need a more wider representation, not just of G7 but other countries. So other countries like India, Argentina, Indonesia, Senegal, South Africa were also invited. So they were also invited over here. Okay. Now India has also, Prime Minister Modi over there has made his commitments to democracy. So one this article is talking about. So this will be scrutinized as to what the government is doing over here on the democratic front, on the freedom of press and all those things. So that is one thing. And other thing is India has made commitments to the Partnership for Global Infrastructure Investment. It has talked about Russia, China, but it has not agreed to every single thing that the G7 actually spoke. So it has tried to balance both, because India has interests with both Russia as well as the Chinese side over here, and they cannot afford bad relations with either the G7 or this bloc over here. Next we come to this I think whatever this is, opinion explainer, whatever. Okay, so should endorsers be held responsible for claims in advertising? Now I was thinking about this. I was not really interested in reading this, but I was thinking how this can be asked. So one way of asking it is, I mean endorsers you mean, right? Celebs, etc. So who are endorsing? Okay. So one way of looking at it was from the point of view of ethics. For example, of pan masala, but everybody knows it's about tobacco. Then this Vimal ad and all those things, everybody knows it's about tobacco and not elaichi, like one of the celebs had said. So ethical implications, right? So is it right? It is wrong from that perspective for them to endorse such things. So that is one thing. Then we can also see that these are kind of surrogate ads. These are not, surrogate ad means they are promoting, they say they are selling elaichi, but everybody knows it's for this thing. Likewise, they are Bacardi CDs. Bacardi is that rum, or that Blender Sprite is a whiskey brand. Everybody knows this, but the ad shows a model walking and or some parties taking place and their Bacardi music. There is no Bacardi music, but everybody knows what they're talking about. So surrogate ads. So are these ethical or not? So we can look at it from the point of view of application of ethics, so applied ethics, GS4. Then should endorsers be held responsible, again from the point of view of ethics, because isn't the government actually allowing this in the first place, and the ads taking place, and the government does know all this? Likewise, this Amraprali project, this construction activities were taking place, and or Maggie also that was there. So there is the government regulation, there is the company over there, so many people, and then comes the celebs who are endorsing it. So why should this monetary penalty or complaint, monetary penalty or whatever that is there, should be to the celebs only, but not for the other stakeholders? The government has issued the license, the government is regulating. So what about the implications on the government over here? Then the people who are funding this project, the endorsements, who are funding that, the companies who are sponsoring all this, the manufacturers of these, what about them? So we hardly ever talk about it, right? So from that perspective, then I thought might as well we can also look at it from the point of view of polity, GS2 paper. So once freedom of speech, Article 19, and one's freedom to do commerce, again coming from Article 19, and one can also add to this Article 21. Okay, so it impairs one's right to do business, commercial interest, economic interest. So that is part of Article 19 over here. Now, should this be part of free speech or not? This is a debate that can be seen over here, and we need to refer to the judgments of the Supreme Court over here. So this is a line of thought that can be asked, because UPSC actually asked what do you understand by freedom of speech, and then it compared, is hate speech part of free speech? So if we say this thing, why can't it be for surrogate ads or for any other thing, promoting liquor or anything? So should that be part of free speech or not? Okay, so this is there. You should be able to justify this. Next is business section over here. I have it more in detail today. So banks have capital to buffer any shock, and this is not good. Okay, so first of all, we have this. From where do we know this? So RBI releases a financial stability report, which is a biannual report. That means it is twice a year, right? So twice in 1 year. In fact, this was asked in the prelims, which agency releases the financial stability report. Okay, so as per this report, it says that if something happens, we already have unsustainable fiscal deficit, if NPA is increased to a very high level or something happens, external debt is increasing, so we have all this, external debt is increasing, so if something happens, the banks have sufficient capital to withstand the shock. So that they're saying. And furthermore, it said that lenders' asset quality has improved. What does asset quality mean? See, lenders, when we say lenders, basically means people who have given money. So it would typically be banks, it could be non-banking financial companies, whatever. So people who have given out money in form of loans. Now we call this as assets because ultimately the banks, etc., lenders would earn money out of it. They will earn the principal amount plus interest. Therefore, it is known as assets. And when they borrow something, it is known as liability. So when it says lender's asset quality has improved, there is an improvement, it means that quality of assets, maybe it means that the assets being risky, that riskiness has come down, their probability of becoming an NPA, that is less, these loans that have been given, their financials are much better as compared to the past. And it says that NBFCs are well capitalized. Some problems had taken place 2-3 years back with reference to non-banking financial companies. So they are also, overall, they are fine over here. So that is what this article is basically saying, and it says that there are market risks, spells of volatility, currency risk, foreign portfolio investors moving outside of a country, all those things. So that risk is there. There is high volatility, but we have sufficient buffer, adequate reserves with us. Okay, then we have some indexes over here, some things, some ratios. So one is capital to risk weighted asset ratio. So capital, let me put it this way, capital to risk weighted assets. So capital that the bank has plus divided by the assets, so which are weighed according to the risk. So that is rising. So this is rising over here. This means the capital is increasing, the risk is declining. So this is a good thing. Okay. While the gross non-performing assets ratio slipped. So non-performing assets, that is assets that are not returning any money to the banks. So the definition of NPA according to the RBI is that if within 90 days neither the principal amount or interest that was to be due to the bank has been given, EMIs basically, if that is not given in 3 months or 90 days, then in that case they will be deemed as NPA automatically. So if a bank has not, if any from any asset or anybody whom money was given, so if that money has not been returned, it is known as the NPA. In fact, it is actually known as the gross non-performing asset in absolute terms. Now within this there is another thing known as net non-performing asset. So net means that, let's say, some measures were taken after a problem was identified, some measures were taken or some provisioning was done by the banks to account for the NPAs. So we should minus out certain things, minus the provisions. So this will give us the net NPAs. So this gives a more realistic picture. So the NNPA has fallen to 1.7%. We don't have to memorize, it's just that lenders' asset quality has improved. Next, we have fiscal deficit touched 12.3% of fiscal year 2023, golden day. Okay, so first of all, what is fiscal deficit? It's given over here. So fiscal deficit is the gap between the total expenditure minus the revenue. So if the expenditure is high, that means the deficit is high. The government has borrowed more. We'll have to borrow more. Okay, so this is naturally not a good thing when you're spending more than what you are actually earning. So it has touched to 12.3%. And in the budget, they said that the fiscal deficit would be around 6.4% of the GDP in the financial year. And you see 12.3%. So one reason could be simple accounting exercise that in this talking about May, right? So eventually the more of the income actually comes when you file the income tax, when you make the payments. So ultimately it will bridge and it will come to this figure of close to this figure of 6.4%. Now this we are getting this information of the deficit from the Controller General of Accounts. So this is important for your prelims. External debt rose $47.1 billion to $620.7 billion. Right, so that means that we are borrowing more from the outside countries. So this is, so external debt is increasing over here. So this is again not a good sign overall, but here they are saying that the banks have sufficient capital to buffer any shock, because when you are borrowing money from the outside and basically you're borrowing dollars, euro, etc., you have to return this back as well. Right, so this is there, and debt is increasing, but debt to GDP ratio has declined from 19.9% to 21.2%. May core sector output rises 2.6% sequentially. Okay, first of all, we should know what is the core sector. So here we have, so core sectors are the most important, like the backbone, right? So on which every other thing rests upon. So core provides thing for the other sectors of the economy. For example, iron and steel, coal provides energy, so this is required for everywhere. Likewise, electricity. So some sectors within the overall economy has been classified as core sectors. So there are briefly 8 core industries within the core sector, 8 industries, and their weightage in the index of industrial production IIP is 40.27%. So that is there. So it's very, very important. 40.227% of IIP. Okay. So this we have. Now it says that the core sector growth has increased by 2.6%. Plus it says cement output slips 3.1%, some basic facts over here. Okay. So core sector for the month of May has been given over here, and it says that it has increased. So overall it is a good sign. But the credit rating agencies say that it is actually misleading because it is on account of base effect. Because the previous year's base was very, very low. So therefore we feel that the rates have increased, but it is not the same thing. It's not really a positive thing. It's an optical illusion. It's optically misleading. Right then, so this concludes our news analysis. So thank you for streaming in to IASPrimers with me, Shubhashish. And before closing in, you can check our community section where we are starting with a new initiative from the point of view of mains 2022, where we'll be sharing 5 odd questions. And the calendar for that has been given over here. Every day the video will be uploaded at 7:30 a.m. So see you there as well. Bye bye, all the best.